Yesterday, I went and ate Mexican food with my brother, a place here in Texas. And it's really hard for me to eat Mexican food. I'm a snob when it comes to Mexican and New Mexican food because we grew up in the restaurants, right? The last podcast I talked about my friend Harley, and it's funny because later on in life when we were growing up, Harley noticed something about me, and he's like, "Man, you know why Chacho can't stop moving? Like, why he's always moving from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. Not a lot of chilling." And his wife was like, "Well, why is that?" And he's because he grew up in a van in a restaurant. He never went home, right? And it's true. My grandmother had a little room for us in the restaurant, and then she bought a van, which kind of it was a nice travel van, and it doubled as like a little room, right? A little. So we go hang out in there, rest in there, take naps in there, all kinds of stuff, and that was that. That was the room. And so whenever we needed to chill or hang out or rest, we'd go there. So one of the things about me growing up was I had terrible, terrible allergies. Terrible allergies. And so my grandmother got to the point where she was like, look, we got to address this. So she took me to get allergy tests. Now, I don't know how they do allergy tests now, but what they did was called a scratch test. And they did shots down both arms. Not a big deal. I handled that fine. But then they had me lay on the bed, and they got this tool that had three little points to it, and they would stick it into my back and turn it. And it was so extremely painful, and they did my entire back. I think it was like 100 cuts. It was torture. It was absolute torture. It was one of the worst things. And then they put the pollen or dander of animals on each one, depending on which one it was. And then whichever one would get a reaction, that would mean that I was allergic to it. Well, the funny thing is, I don't think you have to cut the skin to do that. I mean, if I touch a dog, I get hives immediately. So it's very interesting to me that they felt they had to cut it, but whatever. I got through that, right? Ended up not having to go to practice that day for music, hung out with Harley, kind of chilled. Like it was a rough day. But that began kind of to be part of my life. And so there was a transition in that point that we had left the restaurant on Cerrillos Road, and now my grandmother had opened her restaurant, her new restaurant on West Water Street behind the Hilton downtown. This was a big deal for my grandmother. She had been working so many years since she started the restaurant at the airport to have a restaurant near the plaza in the downtown area. And it's a big deal. People come from all over the world to be on that plaza, to buy art, to eat food, to experience the heritage, Native American, Spanish, all those things, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, downtown Santa Fe is amazing, and so she had her place there, Maria Isabel's on West Water Street, and it was beautiful. Like the back of the restaurant was this beautiful little patio that she built, and it had this portal that went all the way around, right? A porch, portal, went all the way around, and kind of like hacienda style almost, and it had a waterfall in the middle, and it was actually like a little fountain with a waterfall that came down the sides. It was beautiful. Restaurant inside, my uncle had painted little flowers all around the entryways, and it was just a gorgeous little place, right? So now I wasn't seeing Harley as much, and I was still going to the same school, right? But I had made a few friends there, and so it was what it was. You're always figuring things out in life. I would actually perform at that restaurant too. I do great. On top of that, I was doing shows and traveling a lot to Mexico, and I was just super busy, right? My summers, I was cutting albums, working with Antonio, and then the school years, obviously, I was at school. So all of this is happening, and I'm also now once a week going to get shots because it would affect my voice. My allergies were a problem. So I'd go get shots so that I wouldn't have an issue singing. And so the day came. Now, here's how it works. You go and you get your shot, no big deal. But you stick around for 20 minutes because if you have a reaction, that's a problem, a negative reaction. So we would go over there and I'd get my shot. We'd hang out and we bounce. So this day we went over there. I got my shot, hung out. We bounced. Now on the way back to the restaurant, I was feeling tired, man. I was like, I'm so tired. So when we got to the restaurant, it was a regular thing that I said I'm just going to take a nap in the van, right? Because that was kind of our extra little room. She said, okay, no problem. I got to get to work. So she went into the restaurant and she's getting ready for the dinner rush because we would run these errands and do these things. She'd pick me up from school and we'd do these things between dinner for the lunch rush and dinner rush. There was a time there she could get that stuff done. And so I fell asleep and some time went by and I woke up, and when I opened my eyes, I could barely open them. Barely open. I was trying to open. I couldn't understand, and I kept rubbing them. I'm like, why can't I open my eyes? And my face was so swollen that do you guys remember that movie Hitch? Remember when he eats the shellfish? I think it's the shellfish, right? And he blows up, bloop. That's how my face felt. Like that's how I never looked in the mirror, but I couldn't open my eyes and everything felt so tight. And so I stumbled my way into the restaurant. I could barely get there. Like I was so weak. And I got to the restaurant and I opened the door, and as I stumbled in, there was a waitress there. Her name was Karen. Awesome lady. And Karen said, oh my God, Chacho, come here, and sat me down and called my grandmother. I said, Belle, come here. So my grandmother came over. She's like, oh my God. And they're looking at me and they're like almost in a panic, right? So they get me and my grandmother runs me to her van and sits me in the front seat. She jumps in and takes off. Now she knows exactly what's going on. And what was going on was I was having an allergic reaction to the shot, an adverse reaction. We get there, she storms in, and they look at me and they waste no time. The lady at the front desk jumps up, grabs me, and I'm just fading. Like at this point, I can't see anything. I can hear things, and I'm just moving wherever they move me. And I remember that we go through the door where I had gotten my test, and there's a bed in there. And I just remember them throwing me over the bed and pulling down my pants. And I felt needles going into my back end and my butt, right? It's just one after another. And then I woke up. And it had been a few hours, but when I woke up, everything was fine. Everything was perfect. It was a crazy situation. It was super scary. And at that point, I'd say, you know what? I'm going to deal with these allergies, man. I don't want any more allergy shots. And so that's what I did. But it was hard. It was hard because I had allergies and I had to sing and I had all that weight on me, right? And there was everything, like all the responsibility, everything around my singing. I couldn't eat certain things. Couldn't eat chocolate. Couldn't eat peanut butter. Couldn't drink things with ice in them. Stay with it. That was bad for your voice. If you walk outside and it's cold, you got to cover your mouth, right? And don't breathe the cold air. It was always something on that, man. And I just remember like, man, I just want to be a regular kid. Like all these things. And then after that, just more practice and this and that. It was rough, but at the same time, it helped make me who I was, and I love music, and I still love music, right? And so I also know what it takes. I know what it takes to be great at that, and with that. So yeah, man, that's that little story, and that was kind of that transition that reminds me of it. But then we were in Santa Fe, but we were now downtown, and I'd go back to Forest School. My grandmother dropped me off at Nava. She dropped my brother off when he wasn't with my mom, when he was with us. My brother was still back and forth. That was hard on me, man. I'd worry about him. I would worry about him a lot. Like, the situation with my parents wasn't good at all, and I would worry about him. I didn't see my dad much either, like, there was a day that my friend, Keith Meir, and him and John Trujillo, they had a cassette tape. And the cassette tape was LL Cool J, right? And on this cassette was one song that I really like is called I Need Love. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but it goes something like, when I'm alone in my room, sometimes I stare at the wall, and in the back of my mind, I hear my conscience call, telling me I need a girl who's as sweet as a dove. For the first time in my life, I can see I need love. There I was, thinking about the games I played, something like that, right? It's been years. And I thought the song was awesome. So they recorded me. This is how we would get, like, for years, this is how we would get our hip hop because it wasn't on the radio. You couldn't just go buy it in a record store. So they recorded me on the dual cassette player. They recorded from a recorded version to a blank tape, the entire tape. So now I had it. And the sound quality by now was terrible, right? But I had it. And so there was a night that I was at the house and I was there alone. I had my little boombox, ghetto blaster, whatever you want to call it. And so I put my tape in. I decide I'm here alone, like wasn't doing anything. I'm gonna learn it. I'm gonna learn this song. So I went to the bathroom and I put it in there. I had the mirror and I'm performing it, right? And I'm like, when I'm alone in my room, sometimes I stare at the wall, and in the back of my mind, I hear my conscience call. And the funny thing is, I was alone in my room, well, my bathroom, anyways. And so I'm going through the song and I'm learning it, right? It's like, doo, 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 whatever it is. And I'm like, I need love. And all of a sudden, the door opens and it scares the crap out of me. I'm like, what the heck? And I look over and it's my dad. Now, you got to understand, like, I don't see my dad often. And usually when I did see him, he had been drinking. He was altered in one way or another. He would try to hug me. He'd put his scratchy face against my face. He'd smell like alcohol and cigarettes. It wasn't the greatest experience most of the time. But this time he was sober, clean, looked good, didn't smell like alcohol, didn't smell. And he's like, hey, Ito, what are you doing? So I was a little embarrassed because I'm learning this rap song. And I knew, like, my mom didn't like rap music. My uncle didn't like rap music. They thought it was trendy. They thought it wasn't going to last, right? Which, jokes on them. But anyways, I won't speak ill of them. Anyways, they were wrong, man. Hip-hop was here to stay. But my dad wanted to hear it. He's like, well, play it for me. I'm like, all right, cool. So I just thought he was going to hate it, right? So I go ahead and hit play. And he's listening to it, and he starts bobbing his head, and he's like, oh, I like it. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, I like it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm trying to learn it. And he's like, all right, let's do it. So now my dad's doing it with me and helping me learn the song, and we're rapping it together. And we're like, when we were alone in our room, sometimes we stare at the wall. In the back of my mind, I hear my conscience call. It's just getting better and better. And we're just kicking it, man. It was like hours are going by, and we're just learning this song. And I learned the entire song. And then he's like, all right, Ito, I got to go. And that was it, man. He left, and I did. I saw him again. I see him every once in a while, but that time he popped in and we had a good time. And that memory has always stuck to me. It's always stuck in my head, around that time and those things. And so funny how music has affected me in my life, where I can think of a song and it'll take me right back to something, and I can appreciate that moment all over again, man. Especially if I can hear that song. I can appreciate that moment. It's like I'm in it again. And I can make new memories to music, right? It's just a good way to enjoy life. And so that's what we did, man. That was my dad and my night, and we learned that LL Cool J song, and it was cool. It was really cool. I don't know, man. I just tell that story, like, appreciate what we have. Nothing lasts forever, Nothing lasts forever. You got to appreciate what you have while you have it. You got to take those moments and cherish them. Get those moments. And when you're in the middle, here's the thing is, we always wallow and sit in hard times, right? We pray in hard times. Lord, help me get through this, right? We look at hard times, they leave a mark on us, right? The good times, we just let them flow. Oh, it's another good day. It's a great day, whatever. Take it for granted almost, right? The reality is those are the important ones to remember. So when you're in a great time next time you're in a great time, a great space, it could be simple, like learning an LL Cool J song with your dad in a bathroom, right? Simple. Off a cassette tape that we could barely hear because it had been recorded over and over again. But if you can store that, if you can put that away, if you can make it so you can revisit that memory down the road, just take a second and be like, this is important, man. I'm going to take a picture of this in my mind. I'm going to save this. And then instead of just praying when you're in hard times, but pray and say, thank you, God, for this moment, man. Thank you for this moment, this great moment, this okay moment, right? This okay moment might look like a great moment later. Be thankful for that. Gratitude, right? Attitude of gratitude, and we get more great moments. I love to give my kids things when they have gratitude, but when they're spoiled brats and don't really appreciate it, I don't really want to give it to them. You know what I mean? Get kind of frustrated, but when I know they appreciate it, I want to give them more. How do you think God feels? Or if you believe in the universe, how do you think the universe feels? Either one, right? I believe in God. When I have gratitude and I appreciate things and I appreciate my gifts and I don't just let that go, I get more. So it works. So live in gratitude. Look for the good moments and say thanks. Appreciate them and take a picture of that moment so you can go back later. So when things have changed, because things change, when things have changed, you can go back and say, hey, I remember that day. Cheer you up, man. It'll help you out, make you strong, right? Anyways, when I'm alone in my room, sometimes I stare at the wall, and in the back of my mind, I hear my conscience call. Me and Mr. Freddie Taylor, that was a good night, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Dad. Anyways, this is My Dyslexic Life. Please subscribe if you enjoy the stories. Not every story here is about dyslexia. It's about my life, and I happen to be dyslexic. But if you're dyslexic, or if you have any other issues, or you have any other problems, anything in your life, man, any challenge, this is a good place because I want to inspire you. I want to help you enjoy your life. And it's important to me that everybody gets something out of this. So keep your head up, man. Enjoy your life. Stand tall. This is My Dyslexic Life. And thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it.